American trade policy has just been upended by a landmark Supreme Court decision, one that will echo through the halls of government and the global marketplace for years to come. The highest court in the land has stepped in to clarify the boundaries of presidential power, sending shockwaves through Washington and beyond. On October 6, 2025, the court struck down the Trump-era tariffs in a decisive 6-3 ruling, declaring the president had overstepped constitutional boundaries. The justice's decision was not just a legal technicality, it was a forceful rebuke of executive overreach and a reminder that even the most powerful office in the country is subject to the rule of law. The decision reasserts that only Congress can regulate trade with foreign nations, a fundamental check on executive power. This principle, rooted in the Constitution, is designed to prevent any single branch from wielding too much influence over the nation's economic destiny. For years, these tariffs disrupted global supply chains, raised costs for businesses and consumers, and sparked international retaliation. American manufacturers struggled with higher input prices, while families felt the pinch at the checkout line. The ripple effects were felt not just at home, but in boardrooms and markets around the world. Chief Justice John Roberts, writing for the majority, argued that the laws justifying the tariffs gave the president unchecked power, violating the Constitution's separation of powers. The court's opinion emphasized that the framers intended for Congress, not the president, to hold the reins on trade policy, ensuring accountability and debate. This ruling is about more than steel and aluminum. It's about the limits of presidential authority. It's a signal that the era of sweeping executive action on trade, without congressional input, is over. The decision will likely shape how future presidents approach not just tariffs, but a wide range of economic policies. The court's intervention abruptly ends a contentious chapter in U.S. trade policy and sets a powerful precedent for the future. Legal scholars and policymakers alike are already debating the broader implications, as the ruling redefines the balance of power in Washington. Any president seeking to use trade as a unilateral tool now faces a much higher legal barrier. The message is clear: bold moves on trade will require congressional approval, and the courts are ready to enforce that standard. The power to regulate commerce with foreign nations is firmly back in Congress's hands. Lawmakers must now grapple with the complexities of global trade, forging new policies through negotiation and compromise. Businesses are scrambling to adapt, trading partners are cautiously optimistic, and politicians are recalibrating their strategies. The world is watching to see how America's new approach to trade will unfold, and what it means for the global economy. Even in an era of polarization, the Constitution remains the ultimate arbiter of power. The Supreme Court's decision is a vivid reminder that the nation's founding document still shapes the course of American life, even in the most complex and contentious debates. The court has drawn a new line in the sand, reshaping American economic and foreign policy for years to come. As the dust settles, the world waits to see how this historic decision will redefine the rules of trade and the limits of presidential power. To understand the Supreme Court's decision, we need to look at how tariffs work and the powerful role they play in shaping a nation's economic destiny. Tariffs are more than just taxes on goods. They're tools of economic statecraft, used by governments to influence trade, protect industries, and sometimes, to send a message to other countries. A tariff is a tax on imported goods, meant to protect domestic industries or serve as leverage in international disputes. By making foreign products more expensive, tariffs can encourage consumers to buy locally made goods, boosting homegrown businesses. Under President Trump, the U.S. imposed aggressive tariffs on steel and aluminum, citing national security, under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act. This marked a significant shift in U.S. trade policy, with the administration arguing that foreign competition threatened the nation's ability to produce critical materials. The administration argued that a strong domestic metals industry was vital for military readiness, ensuring the U.S. could build tanks, ships, and planes without relying on foreign suppliers. These tariffs aimed to revive American mills and jobs, hoping to spark investment and bring back lost manufacturing capacity to communities hit hard by decades of decline. But the policy also raised costs for manufacturers and consumers, as companies faced higher prices for raw materials and passed those costs along to shoppers. Retaliation from allies like Canada and the EU led to a global trade standoff, with new tariffs on American goods making it harder for U.S. exporters to compete abroad. The economic fallout rippled across industries, from car makers to farmers, as higher costs and lost markets squeezed profits and threatened jobs in unexpected places. The consequences of tariffs rarely stay confined to one sector or country. Instead, they spread through the global economy, affecting supply chains, prices, and international relationships. The Supreme Court's ruling now forces a reckoning with these far-reaching impacts, challenging policymakers to weigh the true costs and benefits of using tariffs as a tool of economic power. The legal challenge to the tariffs was driven by businesses and trade groups who argued the president had exceeded his constitutional authority. They claimed the tariffs were protectionism disguised as national security, imposed under a vague law that handed Congress's power to the president. Their case rested on the non-delegation doctrine. Congress cannot give away its core powers, especially over taxes and trade. The government countered that the president needs flexibility in national security, and that Section 232 provided enough guidance. Lower courts grew skeptical, questioning the link between steel imports and real security threats. These early rulings set the stage for a Supreme Court showdown over the balance of power between Congress and the president. The case became a defining test of constitutional limits in modern trade policy. The Supreme Court's majority opinion went to the heart of American governance: separation of powers. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that Congress, not the president, holds the authority to regulate foreign commerce and set tariffs. The court found Section 232 too vague, giving the president a blank check to impose tariffs for almost any reason. The ruling reaffirmed that Congress must provide clear, specific guidelines when delegating power to the executive. The president's foreign affairs role does not include independent authority to regulate trade. The decision draws on long-standing precedent, warning Congress not to abdicate its core responsibilities. The court signaled there are limits to executive flexibility, especially when it comes to economic policy. This is a stern reminder. Congress cannot outsource its most fundamental duties. The 6-3 split on the court revealed deep debate over presidential power. Justice Alito's dissent argued that national security requires executive flexibility. Threats are unpredictable and can be economic as well as military. The dissenters said Congress intentionally gave the president broad authority to act swiftly in crises. They warned that the ruling could tie future presidents' hands, making it harder to respond to fast-moving threats. The dissent saw the majority's approach as too rigid and academic, ignoring the realities of modern governance. While Congress holds ultimate power, the dissent argued that some delegation is both reasonable and necessary. The debate over the scope of presidential power in trade and security is far from settled. The Supreme Court's ruling triggered immediate economic shockwaves, sending ripples through financial markets and boardrooms across the country. Investors reacted swiftly, and uncertainty spread as businesses scrambled to understand the implications. Tariffs on steel and aluminum were lifted, instantly lowering costs for manufacturers who rely on these essential materials. This move could potentially ease consumer prices on everything from cars to appliances, offering hope for lower costs at the checkout counter. Thousands of companies are now entitled to refunds for tariffs paid, creating a massive administrative challenge for U.S. Customs. The sheer volume of claims is staggering, and the paperwork is piling up fast. Processing these claims could take years, straining businesses, especially smaller ones that operated on thin margins. Many owners are left in limbo, unsure when or if they'll see their money returned. For some, refunds will be a windfall, providing much-needed relief and a chance to reinvest. For others, the long wait could mean ongoing cash flow problems, making it difficult to pay bills or keep workers on payroll. Domestic steel and aluminum producers now face renewed foreign competition, risking job losses in those sectors. Plants that once thrived under tariff protection may now struggle to stay open, and workers worry about their future. The ruling forces a broad economic realignment, with winners and losers across the supply chain. Importers may benefit, but domestic producers must adapt quickly to survive in a more competitive landscape. Relief for some, uncertainty for others. The aftershocks will be felt for years. Every business, large or small, must now navigate this new environment and rethink their strategies. The decision highlights how trade policy can create lasting financial and logistical challenges, forcing both government agencies and private companies to adapt to new realities. America's economy is now adjusting to a new, post-tariff reality, one that will shape the nation's industries, jobs, and global standing for years to come. The Supreme Court's verdict sparked strong reactions at home and abroad. International partners like the EU and Canada welcomed the decision, hoping for normalized trade and the end of retaliatory tariffs. U.S. business groups celebrated, calling it a win for open trade and lower costs. But domestic steel and aluminum producers, along with their workers, warned of renewed threats from cheap imports and possible job losses. Labor unions and industry leaders argued the tariffs had helped revive American mills. Former President Trump and his supporters claimed the ruling weakens U.S. leverage in trade negotiations. The decision draws a clear line between those who benefit from free trade and those who feel left behind. The debate over fair versus free trade is far from over. The Supreme Court's decision is a foundational shift in American trade law and presidential power. By curbing unilateral executive action, the court forces future presidents to work closely with Congress on trade. The era of broad, unchecked use of national security to justify tariffs is over. Congress must now reclaim its constitutional authority and may need to draft clearer, more specific trade laws. The ruling could influence other areas where presidents act under vague statutes, from emergency powers to sanctions. Legal scholars see this as a possible turning point in reining in the imperial presidency. America is being pushed back toward a more deliberative, accountable approach to global economic policy. The debate over good trade policy continues, but the lines of power have been fundamentally redrawn. For the foreseeable future, trade decisions will require collaboration and compromise, not executive decree.